Welcome, English 1102 friends. This is a video going through the story Vampires in the Lemon Grove by Karen Russell. You see Karen Russell was born in 1981. She's a relatively young writer, relatively famous young writer. And this is a story about, this story is in ethics and morals, in part because you read this story and you might think it should be in the Gothic or the grotesque. And they even tell you in this introduction, you know, she is connected to writers like Kafka and Stephen King and people like that, these sort of Gothic, Ray Bradbury, science fiction or horror writers or something like that. But I've included this story because one of the things this story is interested in, and Karen Russell, if you hear her talk about this story, she will talk about this. One of the things this story is interested in is the idea of this person being a monster. And his wife, he meets this woman who becomes his wife, and she is also a vampire. He is a vampire, Clyde, and her name is Maghreb. But she has never fallen into the sort of stereotypes of vampires, and like she's never drank blood. She can turn into a bat and fly, but she's never slept in a coffin. She's not afraid of being out in sunlight, and she teaches him, you know, to not be afraid of those things, and she teaches him to stop killing things and to stop drinking blood. So part of what happens in this story is that she almost domesticates him. She tames him to the point that by the time and he tells you their history, and he's, you know, hundreds of years old. But by the time this story starts, they're living in a lemon grove and living in the cave above, and she is living in the cave above the lemon grove. But they're living in this lemon grove because the lemons, they bite a lemon every night, and it helps them sort of quell their hunger, or it makes their hunger go away for a little while. It doesn't quite satisfy them, but it makes them stop feeling hungry. Like they sink their fangs into the lemon, it numbs them from the hunger for a little while. And what you get in the course of this story is this: I've been domesticated, I've been tamed, I'm not the monster I was, I'm being good. Being with my wife has made me be good. The trade-off for that, though, is that Clyde has become less of a stereotypical vampire, but he has also lost the ability to transform and the ability to fly, which costs him at the end of the story, because at the end of the story he gives in to his sort of hunger, the kind of thing that his wife has never had to do and never indulged in doing. He gives in and bites somebody and kills them, this young woman, Phila, who works in the lemon grove, and he lets himself be the monster that he originally was before. He lets himself give in to these sort of monstrous impulses. He lets himself stop being good in the way that his wife has taught him to be good. But he still can't transform, he still can't fly, and so he has to take the little cog incline cable railway up to try to find her because he can't fly. And he begins to experience the other thing that he has forgotten, which is that although he is immortal and can live, you know, at least theoretically forever like vampires, he can die if he gets seriously injured. He does have a mortal body that can die, and the wind, which he has talked about, some of the vampires, when they fly down every night at sunset, they get blown out over the cliff and down into the water and die. Because he can't fly, you get the sense at the end of the story that he's in danger. He's feeling mortal danger for the first time in a long, long time, because the car is swaying, and he has gotten into this car that was broken and wasn't supposed to be used because the door didn't work. And so at the end of the story, the ending of the story is him feeling two things, that being with his wife and being sort of tamed and domesticated, he hasn't let himself feel in a long time. The first of them is being that sort of monster and killing Phila. This sort of, obviously, he stops being good and gives in to these dangerous, dark impulses. But then he also feels that other feeling he hadn't felt in a long time, which is this fear of death and sense of immortality. His sense of his own possible mortality after all these years of not having to worry about things like that. You know, the wife taught him that if he goes out in the sunshine, it's not going to hurt him. The wife taught him that he doesn't have to sleep in the coffin. And they've just been living together, you know, for decades and decades and decades, not worrying about anything. They've settled down. They move from place to place every once in a while because, you know, they don't age and die, so they have to move to another place. And they have moved to the lemon grove in Italy at the beginning of the story. But he has sort of let himself be totally tamed in all of the ways that he might have gotten hurt or caught or something like that. He stopped doing all the things that would have called attention to him as a monster and got him attacked or hurt or killed or something like that. And at the end of the story, he feels both of those again. That danger, that darkness of being the monster that he had stopped being, but then also the danger that he might die, because being tame has also caused him to lose the ability to fly. And so now he has to use this substitute for flying, which is the cable cars. And the story ends with him feeling like, oh God, I might fly out of this cable car. This might be it. You get that set up right in the beginning. You get the lemon grove, the most succulent lemons. Only 1 or 2 lemons tumble from the branches each hour, but I've been sitting here so long their falls seem contiguous. My wife has no patience for this sort of meditation. Most people mistake me for a small, kindly Italian grandfather. I have an old Nano's coloring, the dark walnut stain peculiar to Southern Italians, but that's because he's so old and he's finally come out into the sunshine after years of hiding from all the sunshine because he was afraid of getting burned. And then right there in the second paragraph, you get the secret of the story. They whisper that I am a widower or an old man who has survived his children. They never guess that I am a vampire. Santa Francesca's Lemon Grove, where I spend my days and nights, was part of a Jesuit convent in the 1800s. Today it's privately owned by the Alberti family. And in that third paragraph, in summers, a teenage girl named Fila mans a wooden stall at the back of the grove. She's painfully thin, heavy black bangs. That's the girl that he ends up killing when he sees her at the movie theater later in the story. I can tell by the careful way she saves the best lemons for me, slyly kicking them under the bench, that she knows I am a monster. Well, here we go. We get the idea of being a monster right here on the first page of the story, that he is a monster. He's kept it under control for a long time, and being married to Magreb has helped him control it, and control all these different aspects of it. But what you get at the end of the story is Magreb abandons him at the movie theater. Is like, forget this, I'm going home. You know, they're trying to have a traditional date, just like a traditional couple. The movie freezes up and she decides to leave. Well, he's left alone at the movie theater. He runs into Fila and things get out of hand. Let's see if I can call your attention to a few important moments in this story. He also sets up the cliffs that are going to be so dangerous later in the story. At sunset, all the tourists all around begin to shout, "Look up, it's time for the path, the descent of the bats." They flow from cliffs that glow like pale chalk, expelled from caves in the seeming billions. Their drop is steep and vertical, a black hail. Sometimes a change in weather sucks a bat beyond the lemon trees and into the turquoise sea. This is what's going to happen at the end of the story. Because he can't fly, he's going to be on the cable cars, and it's going to get windy, just like the wind, the downdraft that sucks these bats down. It's 300 feet to the lemon grove, 600 feet to the churning foam of the Tyrrhenian. At the precipice, they soar upward and crash around the green tops of trees. There's the cave, the caves where his wife has moved into because she can still fly. She has not tamed herself. It hasn't had the same effect. Being married hasn't had the same effect on her because she was never the monster that he was. I stare ahead at a fixed point above the trees and light a cigarette. My bent spine goes rigid. Mortal terror always trips some old wire that leaves me sad and irritable. It'll be whole minutes now before everybody stops screaming. So he looks at all these people who feel their life in danger because they might get bit by a bat or something like that, and he's like, he doesn't remember what it's like to feel that. He can't empathize with them. But at the end of the story, he'll finally feel that again. He talks, this second section gives you my fangs are throbbing, but I won't start without her. He waits for Magreb to fly down. She flies down. They have their nightly lemon, and he tells you about how the lemon helps the hunger go away. We lift the lemons and swing them to our faces. We plunge our fangs piercing the skin amid a long united hiss. Ah. Over the years, Maghreb and I have tried everything. Fangs and apples, fangs and rubber balls. We've lived everywhere. But it's only these lemons that give us any relief. When we first landed in Sorrento, I was skeptical. But then they realized that then the absence of those two feelings, however brief, becomes of heaven. I breathed deeply through my nostrils. My throbbing fangs were still. So that hunger that he feels, the hunger's not satisfied, but when they eat the lemons, the sort of hunger goes away. The sort of problem of it goes away. By daybreak, the numbness had begun to wear off. The lemons relieve our thirst without ending it. Like a drink we can hold in our mouths but never swallow. Eventually, the original hunger returns. I have tried to be very good, very correct and conscientious about not confusing this original hunger with the thing I feel for Maghreb. We're back to the idea of trying to be good, trying to have a conscience, trying to abide by your conscience and not, give in to your worst impulses or worst urges. Like if you're a vampire, biting people and doing these dangerous things. And then the story shifts into these flashbacks. I can't joke about my early years on the blood. Can't even think about them without guilt and acidic embarrassment. This is when you find out that before Maghreb, he was a sort of stereotypical vampire, biting people, drinking blood. I aped the diction and mannerisms I read about in books. Vlad the Impaler, Count Heinrich the Despoiler, Goethe's blood-sucking Bride of Corinth. He's like, when he first realizes he's a vampire, he does all the stereotypical vampire things, drinking blood. In practice, I was no suave viscount, just a teenager in a red velvet cape, awkward and voracious. I wanted to touch the edges of my life. And so he's out there just, living dangerously, drinking blood all the time. He says right here in the next paragraph, I yielded all discrimination. I bid anyone kind or slow enough to let me get close. Men, women, even some older boys and girls. The littlest children I left alone, proud at this time that I had one scruple. Again, one scruple, this idea of like being good, having some kind of morals or ethics comes into the story, where he's like, I was a monster, but at least I didn't, eat small children or something like that. And then he meets Maghreb. I'd read stories about Hungarian vampires who drank the blood of orphan girls and men. I mentioned this to Maghreb early on, hoping to impress her with my decency. Not children, she wept. She wept for a day and a half. And then he gives you the flashback where they meet. And in these flashbacks, those initial days with Maghreb nearly undid me. At first, my euphoria was sharp and blinding, all my thoughts spooling into a single blue thread of relief. The blood does nothing. I don't have to drink the blood. But when that subsided, I found I had nothing left. If we didn't have to drink the blood, then what on earth were these fangs for? And you get this sense, his problem is he has these fangs and he is built to be this sort of predator and killer, and it's like he's sort of wasted. He's not himself, sucking on lemons and being good. And so it's sort of this struggle within him against the vampire that he is and the wanting to be good for Maghreb, be a good husband, be the kind of person that she is, this sort of good, non-threatening person. She can still fly. She's still clearly a vampire, but she has never bitten someone, never hurt anyone. And he takes you through how she teaches him he doesn't have to sleep in a coffin, that he doesn't have to be afraid of the sunlight, that he doesn't have to be afraid of garlic, all these old stereotypes of vampires. And let's see if we can find, here it is. I shook my head. This was a new sadness, difficult to express. My bloodlust was undiminished, but now the blood wouldn't fix it. It never fixed it, Maghreb reminded me, and I wish you would please stop talking. Again, this is a problem that he's going to come back to over and over again in this story, is the fangs are throbbing. Like he can't turn off this sort of desire that he always feels. And being with her has helped him control it, but at the end of the story, he finally gives into it. He finally gives into his bad impulses. Because I love her, this is a really good paragraph that shows that. Because I love her, my hunger pains have gradually mellowed into a comfortable despair. Sometimes I think of us as two wholes cleaved together, two twin hungers. Our bellies growl at each other like companionable dogs. I love the sound, assuring me we're equals in our thirst. We bump our fangs and feel like we're coming up against the same hard truth. Again, this sort of, what do you do about this sort of feeling that you have? And being together helps them control it. Human marriages amuse me. Then we're back to his other problem, the problem of being immortal. And this sort of, what do you do if you're immortal? Like, sooner or later you just get bored and sit around a lemon grove, messing with the tourists and sucking on lemons. Human marriages amuse me. The brevity of the commitment, the sort of shortness, if you live 300 or 400 years, being married for 40 or 50 years doesn't feel like anything. All the ceremony that surrounds it, the calla lilies, the veiled mother-in-laws like lilac spiders, the tears and earnest toast, till death do us part. Easy. These mortal couples need only keep each other in right for 50, 60 years. And again, if you notice, when he talks about marriage and what marriage is supposed to do for you, he says they need only keep each other in right. That part of what marriage is supposed to do is help you keep each other in check, keep each other staying right, make each other better people. This story over and over again, especially when you're getting Clyde's voice and Clyde's thoughts and Clyde's sort of mind wandering to things, it's always about trying to be right, trying to be good, trying to do right, those kinds of issues and concerns. You get this scene where Fila discovers that Clyde is a vampire. Fila and I are alone. I press my dry lips together. Fila is 17 now and has known about me for some time. She's toying with the idea of telling her boss there's a vampire in our grove. But even Fila, because Clyde is so old and he's been out in the sun and he's gotten tan, she's like, oh, you're just a harmless grandfather. You're not really dangerous. Again, another sign that he has been tamed, been domesticated, that being married, that sucking on the lemons and being married to Maghreb has helped him sort of tame him. He's not a dangerous monster anymore. And to all the outside people like Fila, he just looks harmless. They're like, oh, you're not even dangerous. Even if you really are a vampire, you're not dangerous. You remind me of my Nana, she says approvingly. You look very Italian. In fact, she wants to help me hide here. It gives her a warm feeling, like helping her own which is Italian for grandmother, button up his trousers. She's like, you're old, you're harmless. Even if you're a vampire, you're an old, harmless one. But the last section here, I study her neck as she says this, her head rolling with the natural expressiveness of a girl. She checks to see if I'm watching her collarbone, and I let her see that I am. I feel like a threat again. And so you get this sense. The story sort of foreshadows that he's going to give in to his worst impulses. And the story also gives you that in the next section, where instead of one lemon one night, he eats 7. On my 7th lemon, I found this sort of drowsy despair that I couldn't stop. I crawled around on all fours looking for the last bianchettis. In the morning, Maghreb steps around the wreckage, doesn't say a word. And so he's losing control. He's losing his ability to control his sort of vampire impulses, his sort of animal impulses. And that jumps you to that evening I take Maghreb on a date, which is this section right here. I haven't left the lemon grove in upward of 2 years. Blood roars in my ears as I stand and clutch at her like an old man. We're going to the Thursday night show at an antique theater. This is where you get this scene where they go to a movie. It's a vampire movie, and Maghreb and Clyde are both sort of laughing at the sort of silly stereotypes in the movie. That Okie, says Maghreb, is an idiot. I turn my head miserably, and there's Fila. And then he realizes that she, the girl from the Lemon Grove, the girl who works in the Lemon Grove, is at the movie theater too. And the first thing he notices is sitting 2 rows in front of us with a greasy young man, Benny Alberti. Her white neck is bent to the left. And he's like, oh, there's that neck again. The movie freezes up. The movie stops working like old-timey movies used to sometimes. And then I'm alone in the theater because Maghreb leaves him. She's like, I'm going home. The movie's quit working. This is dumb. I'm going home. When I turn to exit, the picture is still frozen. Outside, I see Fila standing in a clot of her friends lit by the marquee. Hey, you, she says, grinning breathlessly, so very close to my face. Are you stalking somebody? My throat tightens. You want the old vampire to bite you, I hiss. You want a story for her friends. Fila laughs. Her horror is a round, genuine thing, bouncing in both of her black eyes. And right here you get this scene. Hey Nano, come on now, what are you? And this is where Clyde finally gives in. He can't be good anymore. He gives in to his sort of animalistic, dangerous vampire impulses and kills her. The girl's head lolls against my shoulder like a sleepy child's, then swings forward in a ragdoll circle. And he knows now that he's going to have to go back and tell Magreb that he's given in, that he's been bad. And so he leaves Fila's body in the alley. I ransack Fila's pockets and find the key to the funicular office, careful not to look at her face. Then I'm walking, running for the lemon grove. I jimmy my way into the control room and turn the silver key. So he turns the cable cars on again, because since he can't fly, the only way he can get up to Magreb in the cave is by taking the little cable cars up there. Unfortunately, once he gets on the cable cars, he can't get off. And the wind starts blowing like it does when it sucks the bats down. Magreb, is she up here? Has she left me? I will never find another vampire. I double back to the moonlit entrance that leads to the open air of the cliffs, the funicular cars. When I find Magreb, I'll beg her to tell me what she dreams up here. I make the bat's descent in a cable car with no wings to spread, knocked around by the wind with a force that feels personal. I struggle to hold the door shut, look for the green speck of our grove. But the box is plunging now far too quickly. It swings wide. The tufa shines like water, like a black heated river. What does Magreb see if she is watching? I like to picture my wife like this. Magreb shuts her thin eyelids tighter. Something has happened tonight that she thought impossible. In the morning, she will want to tell me about it. What has happened tonight that she thought was impossible is he's gone back to his old ways. He's given in. But the suggestion here is also that he might die tonight, and that in the morning she might find his dead body, that these sort of immortal creatures might die. And so what you get is this story about being good. And Clyde, when he first finds out he's a vampire, he's just an animal out, biting people and killing people. There's no discrimination, he says. He doesn't kill small children, but that's it. And then meeting Magreb, getting married, settling down, helps him be good, helps him have a conscience, helps him sort of control all these animalistic impulses that are at the core of his being. But then finally, what this story is in the present is the story of how he catches Fila alone, and Fila is like, oh, you're harmless, you're just an old granddad. And he's like, oh, no, I'm actually not. I'm still a vampire, and I'm still dangerous. And he gives in to all the old bad impulses, kills her just like he used to do hundreds of years ago. And then he feels the other side of that. After killing her, he feels like he puts himself in a situation where he himself might die. He feels the kind of mortality that he talks about, how he's never felt that. He looks at other couples and he looks at people being married and is like, oh, y'all have only got 50 years or so and then you'll be dead. Well, now he's put himself in a situation where he might be dead too. This person who can't die of natural causes is at the end of the story, is in this dangerous situation. So he's back to feeling both sides of the sort of situation that he hasn't felt in hundreds of years, the killing and potentially dying. So this is a story really about part of being good. This story seems to suggest is controlling your bad impulses and the things and ways that you put into your life to control that, to help you do that and to help you be a good person with a conscience. That, like both the sucking on the lemons, to help him sort of deal with that hunger, but also being with Magreb, this person, being married to a person that makes him want to be a better person and not be this sort of just bloodthirsty monster that he was when he first discovered he was a vampire. So hopefully that helps you understand this story, and also help you sort of understand how it fits into that ethics and morals category, the way that this is a story of a person trying to be good, and then at the end of the story, after being good for decades and decades, giving in and being bad. So if you have questions about this story, questions about Karen Russell, any of that kind of stuff, just be in touch with me. Otherwise, I hope this helps you with Vampires in the Lemon Grove.